Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Thought Leaders. It's Wednesday, the 14th of October, 8 a.m. here in Melbourne. And I'm joined today by Caroline Henshaw and Mozouris from the Mantel Group. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good stuff. So, Com's the CEO of the Mantel Group. Caroline's the head of People and Culture. For those that don't know, the Mantel Group is the fastest growing technology service provider in Australia with a house of brands strategy, recently recognised in the top places to work in Australia. The brands are CMD Solutions, Eliza, Digio and Casna, covering cloud technology, AI, machine learning and design, and digital technology consulting. Hopefully I've just about got that right. Caroline, can you maybe talk to the Mantel Group culture and how you've nurtured and developed it, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Gee, it's nice seeing the notes coming through because, to be honest, they're the words that we wanted to be able to describe our culture with when we set it up. And I think having the luxury of starting an organisation from scratch, we could be really clear about what we wanted to create with our culture. And trust was probably the biggest word, certainly from my perspective, creating a culture of trust. And, a culture at the end of the day is just the way we do things, really. It's the way people behave and it's the way they interact. And so for us, it was fundamentally creating a culture of trust. And so to nurture it was to be really clear about what we wanted to achieve and what it looked like. And then working backwards, how do you create a culture of trust and using all of the, I guess, the lessons that we collectively, as a leadership group, and as an organisation had learnt from other places. So we set it up to be a principle-based organisation, and that's the fundamental part of it. And what we mean by that is we call our values. Every organisation has some sort of values. Usually, we call them principles, and that's for us was how we could define who we were and what our culture would be and how we would get to a point that everyone had that distinctive trust and inclusivity. So for us I describe it using the language of our principles. But the way it works for us is thinking about how do we create trust through principles? And that means taking away things like policies because we had principles. So if we were defined by our principles and defined by our values, then we don't need a whole lot of rules. We don't need to be telling everyone what to do because we can trust that everyone understands and has the agreed intentions or values that are similar to us. And that's what we've fundamentally built it on. And then there's a lot more detail I can go into, but
yeah, I think it might be quite interesting as well if you can just pull out a bit around obviously creating the culture and building the trust from a scale-up environment. Can you speak to any advice or techniques? Because maybe some people on this webinar this morning, they're in an environment where there's not as much trust as there could be, and they're looking to shift culture from the old world to the new world. Can you offer any advice, counsel around strategies, techniques, tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to do, and I think most people I'm sure know this, but is to literally find out what the current situation is. And people do a lot of engagement surveys or pulse surveys, but at the end of the day, you need to find out why there's no trust, or so you really need to find out where you're at. What is your current culture? What are your current behaviors? Why, where you are and where you want to be. And then it's simply about working out, okay, if you know there's not a lot of trust, why isn't there a lot of trust? Is it because people haven't done what they say they'll do? And it's usually pretty simple. We're really simple as adults in a workplace. It's usually because of a few fundamental behaviours or particular moments in time where people have not done what you would have wanted in your culture. And so it's about actually looking at them, acknowledging them, and then changing them and holding everyone to account. And it's, again, someone on this call said it's setting expectations. And so it's been really clearly defining the expectations of the culture. And then when people aren't living it, doing something about it. And I think they're the really, it's the same with anything. It's setting the expectations. And if people don't do it, there are repercussions and you need to do something about that.
Yeah. And we might talk to principles a bit and ask Con for your opinion to start with. So I guess one of the examples I always think of with principle cultures is the 14 Amazon leadership principles and how everything's driven from those, really. But can you talk a bit around Principles Con and how that came to be? And obviously you've gone from 0 to 300 people in 3 years, which is, you know, rapid growth. So maybe you can talk about the principles and your values a bit.
Yeah, sure. I think there's an aspect of it where, you know, early on in the process, and, you know, when Caroline came up on board, and we kind of shared, and one of the other things that are really important to try and enable where we want to be from a culture standpoint is, you know, our strategy. And, you know, and early in the business, actually prior to the business, 6 months before, we put a really detailed game plan around what our strategic foundation is and where we want to be over a time frame. And for us, it's a 5-year strategy map that we put together. And we use that as the mechanism that when everybody comes on board in this business, we share that strategy, and we try to get everyone on board with it.
Yep.
And if people don't agree with it, that's fine as well. They have an option early on in their employment to either opt out or double down and commit to what we're here to do. And, you know, we always use that as our mechanism for making decisions, alignment in team around the way we think, and the underpinnings around that, you know, as Caroline talked around our culture and our principles are hugely important to ensure that that strategy can play out in the way we need it to. And we've got 5 principles, and they very much align to how Caroline talked about our behaviours around trust, honesty, open communication, and the like. They communicate directly, in it together, make good choices, love what you do, and make things better. And we always use that as the context of shaping the way we work as a team, as a group of organisations, but also as a collective group of people. And we work towards those 5 key principles day in, day out. Caroline,
so as I said, congratulations on the top 10 places to work. What do you attribute that to, and what do you all do differently?
Oh, thank you. And it was so lovely to get that news, especially during COVID, to be honest. It was really, really nice for us. So I think we attribute to it to being really clear about who we are and setting our team's expectations when we hire people. So we talked about being principle based. The other thing, you know, that we really focused on is the importance, you know, one of the things I think that we truly believe is it's when you're a small startup, people love working there, and there's some reasons why people, and there's a lot of reasons why people, you know, are generally more engaged in very small companies. And so what we tried to do is, as we grew, really understand what it is that's amazing about small companies and keep that with us. And as we scale up, be able to continue to have what's great about a very small company. And one of the things that I believe is great about small companies is the individual employment experience. So every person has a relationship with their CEO and the leadership team, and they make work fit with their life. They have a personal experience. So, you know, they may be going through family situation and their work works for them. And often what happens when you work at a larger organization is it becomes very one size fits all. And that's a, you know, a bit of a simplified explanation, but that's really what happens. And so for us, we worked really hard at how do you scale an organization? How do you get bigger? But every person continues to have this individualized experience. And so we built in something that we call My Deal, but we built in an individual approach, which is every person basically has an individual experience. They talk to their CEO and myself every year on their work anniversary. Obviously they talk to us a lot more than that, but they have a carved out time where we talk about, for the next 12 months, what is it that you need? What is it that is right for you? And how do we change work? How do we do whatever it is you need from us? And so from that, having an individual experience, I think has been really important, that when we went through Great Place to Work and everyone was asked these questions, every single person, I think I can comfortably say, because our results were really good, was work suits them. They're getting what they need from it, and what they need is different. And so there's that part of it. And then there's the other part, which is, you know, if we be honest, really, really important, that we've hired people like to work with. People like to work with nice people, and it's as simple as that. And it's a really important thing for us that when we're hiring for cultural fit, you know, and there's certain language I won't use on this call, but we don't hire people who aren't nice is the best way to say it. And so people like working with their colleagues. That's just the way they do.
Yeah,
And so, you know,
you know, it's good if you get on with each other, right?
Completely. And I think for us as a technology company, one of the most important things for our team was to work with people that they respect as well from a skills perspective. So again, and I know we're going to talk about recruitment, it was keeping those standards up. So there's a few different things for us, but it was very much around the individual experience and scaling that up.
Yeah. So Con, I might get you just to talk about the House of Brand strategy, because it strikes me that, and maybe you can talk through, you know, broad overview of the different businesses, because that presumably creates a bit more of an intimate experience, I guess, from a team member perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of gets back to part of the design of Mantel Group very early on in the cycle around, you know, with culture as well. They're all sort of intrinsically tied together, but, you know, for us to scale and scale hard, we needed to build this business to support a team of 300 to 400 very quickly. So part of our design was to think through that, you know, part of maintaining culture and being incredibly consistent with the way, you know, not only with what we say, but also with what we do, we needed a way that we could maintain a very flat structure in the organization, but give the team meaning around what they do. And the House of Brand strategy was formed around that concept. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't build a lot of hierarchy. A lesson learned out of the previous business, I guess, is, you know, once we sort of reached that team of 150 mark, we started to see some connectivity in the organization break. And there's actually, there's a theory around it. Robin Dunbar's kind of posits that, you know, individuals with relationships greater than 150 start to break down. So we found that the team being a team of 150 was probably the maximum we wanted to have in an area of focus. So the House of Brands really ties to that, where we try and break up a very large organization into quite a flat structure with strong leadership wrapped around teams that have very clear purpose. And our brands to date are really focusing on that. So as you alluded to earlier on, an example is Digio. That team's around 140 as a collective group that focus on digital and digital transformation. We'll look to break aspects of Digio over time. And then there's a really good example that we're going to launch a design business as a result of some of the work that Pat's done within that business. So using House of Brand strategy gives us a very flexible operating model where we can grow quickly the organization, but without putting too much pressure on process, culture in particular, and allowing teams to stay focused and wrapped around core leadership that we have around each brand, with the CEO and the CTO leading each.
Fantastic. It's going to be quite interesting. I see the CEO of Google has said that remote working, you're basically trading on established relationship equity. And certainly we've noticed there's a difference between getting a team that know each other and have met face to face to move to virtual versus people who've never met each other. That's a different set of challenges moving to a virtual world. Have you noticed any difference between those two scenarios? Maybe Caroline, I can throw it to you first.
Not as much as I thought. And I mean, we've hired quite a few people now during COVID, so people that have never met their, you know, other people in person. And we've had a number of people start with clients that they've never met the clients. So I think initially, absolutely, there was some initial awkwardness, if we be honest. And it's really gone now. And we have spent, I think you have to spend a lot of time making sure you have incidental conversations. So, you know, you lose the small talk with a lot of video calls. And I think one of the things that we've really tried to do, especially with new team members, is make sure we find time to get to know them as people and to have chats and just to do that, which is really, really important to get people involved in an organization and make them feel like they have relationships. One of the things that I think has been actually beneficial from it, though, is we have a Sydney and Melbourne office and a much bigger presence in Melbourne. And I think by everyone being on video conferences, it's also given everyone a bit more of a level playing field. So as opposed to often being kind of the only person in Sydney alone on the video conference when everyone is in the room together, in Melbourne, everyone's at home. And I think in some ways it's actually enabled some people to talk more and get to know their colleagues in a different way.
It's a mental health month, as we spoke about. So can we talk a bit about mental health, resilience, how you drive that through the organisation? Caroline, I'll ask you to go first, please.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been, I think, really passionate about mental health. So for our team, we provide unlimited sick leave or health leave. So and that encompasses, you know, we've always thought it's important as an organisation not just to celebrate the good times with people, but to be there when times are tough. And it's certainly, you know, people respect you for doing that, I think. And so for us, we provide unlimited sick leave, and that continues. And the other thing for us is really around supporting the team and seeing how they're going at the moment. So in a few minutes at 8:45 every Wednesday morning, our team they do the Resilience Project. So I don't know if many people are familiar with the Resilience Project, but I think they're fantastic, and they just do these little short micro videos for the team about empathy, gratitude, resilience, and the team have found that fantastic. So we do that every Wednesday together as an online group. And really just checking in on people. So one of the things that worried me early on was people who would get lost. You know, we have a number of people who will bring up that they've got mental health issues, that they're not coping. They'll talk to a colleague, but we also have a lot of people who I worried wouldn't say anything, and we wouldn't know. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we make sure that every single person in our team is reached, you know, is spoken to at least regularly to find out how they're, you know, if they're okay. And we've got a structure called People Guides, which is similar to mentors or managers to a certain extent. So every person must check in with their guidees every week at least and see how they're going. And so we just put some structures in place to make sure, you know, everyone was being checked in on. Every Friday, the team fills in an online, how are you going? How are you feeling? And they literally just have to click on a different emoji. And so if anyone clicks on the one that has the head exploding one, on the Monday, you know, they get a call from someone in my team. There's 3 of us in our team, and we just follow them up to see why their head's exploding. And we just do things like, you know, send them flowers or check in and make sure they're okay. So we've spent a lot of thought around supporting the team. And I think the biggest thing too is people, including the leadership team, sharing stories. We use Slack, which, you know, there's some great things about Slack, and our team is very engaged with it. People will share stories when they're not doing well. And I think that's the best thing, is it's okay to not be okay. And so that's where, you know, we've developed that, and our leadership team themselves will say, I'm having a bad week. You know, this is what I'm doing. And so we do all that sort of stuff.
I'm going to talk a bit about customers, because obviously customers are very important. Con, maybe you can kick off with this one. So how do customers face into your culture, and have you had to think about adjusting any aspects of your culture to align with customer requirements?
Yeah, firstly, no, we won't adjust our culture for any clients that we have. I mean, we are who we are, and it's if a client likes the way we operate as an organisation, you know, at a technical solutions level to how we lead the business, then that's perfect, and that's when, you know, real partnerships happen between Mantel Group and its clients. But we operate at different levels, and, you know, particularly post-COVID, we've found a lot more focusing in on how we can, I guess, bi-directionally help each other out. And there's examples of a client in a telco business where at a executive level, we're now engaging, you know, Caroline's getting involved as well to sort of look at how cultures can operate together and add value up and above just providing a service or a solution to a client. So we're trying to get, we're trying to build our relationships to become deeper and more immersed with our clients, so that it's not just providing an outcome, where we're really trying to focus in on what the objectives are of the client at a business strategy standpoint, and then bring in all aspects of our business, and as you allude to, our culture and the way we run our business, it can hopefully influence how our clients implement some of their programs internally as well. And I think that's a really exciting part post-COVID, is that the connectivity with our clients and the immersion that we have with them is moving in the right direction for us, I guess.
Caroline, can you maybe add a bit around some of the work that you'd be doing with customers?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, actually. I've started speaking to more and more of our customers just around culture and things that we're doing, and just, you know, things that might be of interest to them as well. So there's really just shared discussions, and there's lots of things I can learn from our customers as well. But really talking about some of the things that we do, and because even simple things like social events, we invite our customers along to, and I think they get a feel for our culture. And so often on the back of that, I'll have a chat to them about what we're doing, and a lot of our customers are a lot bigger than us. So it's about how can they change things, you know, what can they do, what small things can they do that might change their culture just a little bit, and go through that. And then for others, it's about org design and how can they, you know, set up their organizational structure in a way that, again, promotes trust and things like that. So there's a number of conversations, and they're really great conversations to have.
Fantastic. We're going to get through a few questions, and I encourage you all to connect with Caroline and Con on LinkedIn to continue the conversations. But first things, finally, Con, just give us a quick 30 seconds on 2021. What would it look like in an ideal world?
I think we're very clear on what we want to do in the next 9 months, if you will. We're going to add 2 to 3 brands to our business during that time. So hopefully early next year we launch those brands into some new areas as part of our growth strategy. Our growth strategy is centered around not only incubating new brands from within, but also acquisitions as well, which is, you know, if we talk about lessons learned, is another area as well. But I'm pretty excited in moving into the new year in terms of how the world will evolve as part of this new normal, and I think it's exciting for us as a business as well, in a way around shaping and reshaping how we work, how we engage with our team as a collective group, but also how we engage in the market. So I'm excited that we're turning the tide and focusing in growth mode. I think even though there's some concerns around economic conditions and how the world's evolving post-COVID, the flip side is, when we've seen it historically on the back of big shake-ups in economic conditions globally, that we do have a run with technology, and I think Mantel Group's well centered with its go-to-market solutions, its brands on continuing its growth trajectory and adding value into the market.
Fantastic. So we'll go through a few questions. We've got time for a few here. So the first one's for you, Caroline. So bad eggs, so difficult stakeholders, we'll call that. What advice can you give people for working with, maybe challenging individuals?
I'm trying to think if the question is of difficult employees that maybe shouldn't be working there, or difficult colleagues. I'll take it as either. I think, my response is, well, don't, but that's probably not a very helpful response. So dealing with difficult stakeholders is my view is understanding why they're difficult, and understanding why they're difficult and what the problem is, and whether you can be aligned on values, whether you can work with them, and what your common ground is, basically. And finding, my view is most people that are difficult because something else is going on for them, or they don't understand the benefit in what you're talking to. So it's changing your style and finding what their problem is and helping them fix their problem. Yeah. And working with them.
Because I do think, to your point, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, you don't know what they're going through outside of work or inside of work, and they could have battles of their own that they're fighting, of course. So Lee wonders, what are some of the key attributes you look for when engaging a new team member? Throw this one to Con, as you're the expert at finding people on LinkedIn, we're told.
It's true.
Thanks. I think I alluded to it around our attributes, around what sort of behaviours and the style of an individual, and it kind of for us it's that sort of customer focus, focusing on the client, making good judgment, having some resilience, and in the consulting world it is tough. You've got to be prepared to be very flexible in the way you work. And I think one of the fundamentals is accountability, being able to put your hand up and own things in the business, whether they're in your patch or not. We're in it together as one of our principles to make sure we move forward. So it's really sort of ticking the boxes around our cultural attributes and our principles, and finding the right people that we think we can work together and genuinely want to work together.
Fantastic. Caroline, this one for you then. So Nui says, or asks rather, do you have tangible metrics or a data center metric for when hiring for cultural fit? Or are your choices made by instinct, or maybe a bit of both?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a bit of both, to be honest. We've got some, and it's always a work in progress because it's hard, really doing it. So yeah, it's as much as possible bringing things back metrics wise to our principles. We've done quite a lot of talent profiling around why people are successful and the types of backgrounds, types of experiences, the attributes that we can pick up during interviewing, what makes them successful. And then we've moved that into our interview guides and our process. So there is as much process and data behind it as there can be, but honestly, it's also about having really good interviewers that know what they're looking for.
Yeah, okay. And along the same lines, so I'll throw to you again, Caroline. So Gary Winkle, good morning, Gary, says, as you continue to grow with more people, more customers, do you think there'll be significant challenges in holding to your principles, and what are you sort of working through to hold the line on them?
Yeah, Gary, it's a really good question. And it's always been the thing, I think, in the back of our mind is, how do you scale up a principle-based organisation? Because a lot of companies start this way, and then as they hit about 100, they put in processes and change things. So for us, yes, there will be challenges, but I think we're pretty well prepared for them. And I think going through COVID was probably the best way to cement to us our level of comfort with them. It's easy to be principle based when times are good. And to be quite frank, times have been pretty good for us until COVID. And then COVID hit and it was a stressful time. It was, we could have made a lot of different decisions, approaches, and watching our organisation stay true to our principles, particularly in it together, was an extraordinary thing. And it really it showed how strong our principles are in our culture. And I think having the house of brands, just to be really a quick answer, being able to keep each brand to sort of 150 and really keep everything small, it does enable us to scale up with this principle-based organisation. But there's a lot of work and a lot of thought that goes in to making sure that we can scale it. It's not easy, but we are committed to continuing to be principle-based this way.
And it's amazing to listen and spend time speaking with you both this morning. It's inspirational and very genuine as well, which certainly resonates well. And again, as a business started in Melbourne, Click for Vic, we've got to all support Victorian businesses. And just a reminder, we're supporting Beyond Blue for this series, so no obligation, but if you do have a couple of dollars spare for the fundraising, all to Beyond Blue because it's Mental Health Month. We're out of time. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Con and Caroline, really appreciate your time and speaking to you both. Ladies and gentlemen, Con and Caroline, see you next time.
Thank you so much.